Welcome everybody, this is Alan with Daily Armour of God. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. This is Reading the Bible in 123 days. We're on day 86, and today we'll be reading more Ezekiel, reading chapters 26 through 33. So continuing here in Ezekiel, chapter 26, verse 1. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the first day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, because that Tyrus hath said against Jerusalem, Aha, she has broken that was the gates of the people, she is turned unto me, I shall be replenished, now she is laid waste. Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Tyrus, and will cause many nations to come up against thee, as the sea causeth his waves to come up. And they shall destroy the walls of Tyrus, and break down her towers. I will also scrape her dust from the earth, and make her like the top of a rock. It shall be a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea, for I have spoken it, saith the Lord Yahweh. It shall become a spoil to the nations. And her daughters which are in the field shall be slain by the sword, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. But thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I will bring upon Tyrus Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, a king of kings from the north, with horses, and with chariots, and with horsemen, and companies, and much people. He shall slay with the sword thy daughters in the field. He shall make a fort against thee, and cast him out against thee, and lift up the buckler against thee. And he shall set engines of war against thy walls, and with his axes he shall break down thy towers. And by reason of the abundance of his horses, their dust shall cover thee. Thy walls shall shake at the noise of the horsemen, and of the wheels, and of the chariots, when he shall enter into the gates, as men enter into a city wherein is made a breach. With the hoofs of his horses shall he tread down all thy streets. He shall slay thy people by the sword, and thy strong garrison shall go down to the ground. And they shall make a spoil of thy riches, and make a prey of thy merchandise, and they shall break down thy walls, and shall destroy thy pleasant houses, and they shall lay thy stones and thy timber and thy dust in the midst of the water. And I will cause the noise of thy songs to cease, and the sound of thy harps to be no more heard. And I will make thee like the top of a rock. Thou shalt be a place to spread nets upon. Thou shalt be built no more, for I, Yahweh, have spoken it, saith the Lord Yahweh. So, like what we read yesterday, more judgment upon all the nations, it's continuing. So, if you remember, God is using Ezekiel to give warnings to all these nations surrounding Jerusalem that basically are her enemies, and they're going to be paying for their for all their abominations as well. So it's not just Israel that gets taken away captive and punished for their sins, but also all the nations. Even Babylon gets punished. God said it would be a desolation, and we see that happening later on. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh to Tyrus, Shall not the isles shake at the sound of thy fall, when the wounded cry, when the slaughter is made in the midst of thee? Then all the princes of the sea shall come down from their thrones, and lay away their robes, and put off their broidered garments. They shall clothe themselves with trembling. They shall sit upon the ground, and shall tremble at every moment, and be astonished at thee. They shall take up a lamentation for thee, and say to thee, How art thou destroyed that wast inhabited of seafaring men, the renowned city, which was strong in the sea, she and her inhabitants, which caused their terror to be on all that haunt it. Now shall the isles tremble in the day of thy fall? Yea, the isles that are in the sea shall be troubled at thy departure. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, When I shall make thee desolate city, like the cities that are not inhabited, when I shall bring up the deep upon thee, great waters shall cover thee. And I shall bring thee down with them that descend into the pit with the people of old time, and shall set thee in the low parts of the earth, in places desolate of old, with them that go down to the pit, that thou be not inhabited, and I shall set the glory in the land of the living. And I will make thee a terror, and thou shalt be no more. Though thou be sought for, yet shalt thou never be found again, saith the Lord Yahweh. Ezekiel 27. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyrus, and say unto Tyrus, O thou that art situate at the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am of perfect beauty. Thy borders in the midst of the seas, thy builders have perfected thy beauty. They have made all thy shipboards of fir trees of Sinir, and they have taken cedars from Lebanon to make the masts for thee. Of the oaks of Bashan have they made thine oars. The company of the Ashurites have made thy benches of ivory, brought out of the isles of Chittim. Fine linen with broad work from Egypt was that thou spreadest forth to be thy sail. Blue and purple from the isles of Elisha was that which covered thee. The inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners. Thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee, were thy pilots. The ancients of Gebel and the wise men therefore were in thee, thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. They of Persia and of Lud and of Foot were in thine army, thy men of war. They hanged the shield and helmet in thee, they set forth thy comeliness. The men of Arvad with thine army were upon thy walls round about, and the Gamandims were in thy towers. They hanged their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy beauty perfect. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of multitude of all kind of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead. They traded in thy fairs. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy market. They of the house of Togmarah traded in my fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thine hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Syria was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of the wares of thy making. They occupied in thy fairs with emeralds, purple, embroidered work, and fine linen and coral in agate. Judah and the land of Israel, they were thy merchants. They traded in thy market wheat of Minnith and Penang, and honey and oil, and balm. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wares of thy making, for the multitude of all riches, and the wine of Helbon, and the white wool. Dan also and Javan going to and fro occupied in thy fairs. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were in thy market. Dedan was thy merchant in precious clothes for chariots. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they occupied with thee in lambs and rams and goats, and these were they, thy merchants. The merchants of Sheba and Ramah, they were thy merchants. They occupied in thy fairs with the chief of all spices and with all precious stones and gold. Haran and Chena and Eden, the merchants of Sheba, Asher, and Chilmad were thy merchants. These were thy merchants in all sorts of things, in blue clothes, and embroidered work, and in chests of rich apparel, bound with cords and made of cedar among thy merchandise. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou wast replenished and made very glorious in the midst of the seas. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind hath broken thee in the midst of the seas. Thy riches and thy fairs, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and thy occupiers of thy merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, and in thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the midst of the seas in the day of thy ruin. The suburbs shall shake at the sound of the cry of thy pilots, and all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea shall come down from their ships, and they shall stand upon the land, and shall cause their voice to be heard against thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust upon their heads. They shall wallow themselves in the ashes, and they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee with bitterness of heart and bitter wailing. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and lament over thee, saying, What city is like Tyrus, like the destroyed in the midst of the sea? When thy wares went forth out of the seas, thou filledst many people. Thou didst enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of thy riches and thy merchandise. In the time when thou shalt be broken by the seas and the depths of the waters, thy merchandise, and all thy company in the midst of thee shall fall. All the inhabitants of the isles shall be astonished at thee, and their kings shall be sore afraid. They shall be troubled in their countenance. The merchants among the people shall hiss at thee, and thou shalt be a terror, and shall never shalt be any more. Wow. So, this chapter is a great example of this nation was described as a wealthy, bustling nation with many nations coming into it and trading with it. And it sounds like they were very prosperous, very proud of themselves as well. And also is one of the reasons why they're going to be completely wiped off the face of the earth. And like this last verse said, never shall be any more. That's so true. A lot of the ancient civilizations, during biblical times, I would say most of them are just gone. Cities completely gone. Cities that are desolate, cities that are covered by sand, or cities completely destroyed. And that was God's judgment. A lot of them were God's judgment surrounding Israel. Just got completely wiped off the face of the earth. And it sounds to me in this chapter that they were on the coast, right? They were on the coast. And it sounds to me like they actually literally sunk into the sea. Like maybe the waters rose and covered their city. Or maybe they built upon the water a little bit. Who knows? But it sounds to me like, they're just completely gone. And also, this chapter here greatly reminds me of, I think it's in Revelation, when it's talking about the whore of Babylon, I think. Talking about how that city will be desolate and destroyed and all that, and people will wail and lament and cry over it. I think that's in Revelation, but that's what this reminds me of. People are going to wail and hiss and be sad that this city is destroyed because of their pride and because of what they did to Israel. It sounds like they were their enemies. Or maybe they were just mocking them in some way. Either way, God took time to write about this in the Bible through the Holy Spirit, through a man. And so they must have been doing something evil to warrant complete obliteration. Right? God doesn't just wipe out cities just for the sake of it. They were doing something. Anyway. So this was all about Tyre. Here. Yep. They're gone. Alright. It looks like we're continuing still with Tyre. 28. Ezekiel 28. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God, I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. So this right here, the next chapter answers the question, well, why did Tyre get such a heavy-handed blow from God? Well, right here, this is super serious. If you recall, Satan, or Lucifer, when he was in heaven, he was talking about, I will ascend. I want to be God. I. He was pride. It was pride that caused his downfall. And this is pride here, right here. These people of Tyre. And the prince of Tyre, and I'm sure the people too, were like, we're God. Our city is God. Our city is prosperous and wealthy and blah, blah, blah. So this is a very serious, in God's eyes, this is serious. Pride is very, very serious. I'm not going to get into pride. I could go on and on about pride and how many verses talk about pride. So many verses. In fact, I might do a Bible study on pride. Right? Because it is such a serious issue to God. God hates pride. Think of, there's just one example. I'm not going to get into too much, but think of the Babylon. Remember what we read? How Babylon's going to fall? And if you recall, Nebuchadnezzar, he didn't give glory to God. And what did God do? Nebuchadnezzar said he is God. Remember that? And what did God do to Nebuchadnezzar? Not only was his kingdom later on completely removed, but Nebuchadnezzar himself, he became dumb. He couldn't speak. And he crawled on all fours, and he lived out in the wild, eating grass like an animal, living as an animal, until he gave God the glory and God the respect and God the fear. Like, literally, they had no fear of God. So there's so many Bible studies here. I've done a Bible study on fear of the Lord, and this kind of goes together with pride. When you have so much pride in yourself, that is very, very sinful and very serious. And a lot of people don't think about how serious pride actually is. And to God, it's very serious. So, anyway, I'm gonna do a Bible study on that because I could go on for a long time talking about this, and I have a lot of verses I could show in the Bible that talk about how pride is so bad, right? So they were having so much pride that they thought themselves to be God. Alright, so that answered our question from the last chapter. Why did God completely destroy Tyre? Right here. Ezekiel 28:2 is the answer. Alright. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten thee riches, and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Right? What happens when you become rich? Here's another example. When the children of Israel, when they started to be prosperous in the land during the time of Judges, what happened? They became prideful and became wealthy, that they were relying on their wealth instead of relying on God. And that led them into, idol worship and different abominations, which led them into captivity and slavery over and over again. Same with during the time of kings. These kings that became wealthy, they stopped relying on God. They stopped trusting in God. They stopped worshiping God. And they worshiped themselves and their riches and all their wisdom that they got and all their wealth and treasures. And they became lifted up, so to speak, right? We see that happening, and when that happens, guess what? Something comes and happens. Either they're taken away captive, or a war comes to them and they lose everything, or they get plundered. Their temple gets raided and everything gets taken away. Like, something happens when you do this, when you lift yourself up, when they lifted themselves up, something happened every single time. And that is probably why the Bible presses so hard about being rich. When we're rich, wealthy in this world, it's dangerous, because we could easily forget about God and go our own way, backslide, or completely reject God and trust in your own riches. So there's another Bible study right there about your riches and what riches can do to you. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Yahweh, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. They shall bring thee down to the pit, and thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. Wilt thou yet say before him that slayeth thee, I am God? But thou shalt be a man, and no God, in the hand of him that slayeth thee. Thou shalt die the deaths of the uncircumcised by the hand of strangers, for I have spoken it, saith the Lord Yahweh. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore will I cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay before thee kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore will I bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and shall never shalt thou be any more. So here's Sidon. We hear about this being talked about in the New Testament too by Jesus Christ. Talking about Tyre and Sidon. So interesting to see these parallels, but Jesus Christ does talk about Tyre and Sidon when he's giving warning to all the villages that he sends his disciples to share the gospel, and he says, woe unto them. It'd be better if they were Tyre and Sidon. It'd be better for Tyre and Sidon. So he's saying that these cities that reject him and his message are going to be worse off than Tyre and Sidon, which got completely annihilated. And a lot of the cities around the lake, the Sea of Galilee, did get completely destroyed, and there's not a lot of them left. So, yeah, it's interesting to see Tyre and Sidon here, and we read about it in the New Testament as well. So, Ezekiel 28:20. Again, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Zidon, and prophesy against it, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Zidon, and I will be glorified in the midst of thee, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. When I shall have executed judgments in her, and shall be sanctified in her. For I will send into her pestilence, and blood into her streets, and the wounded shall be judged in the midst of her by the sword upon her on every side, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. And there shall be no more a pricking briar into the house of Israel, nor any grieving thorn of all that are round about them, that despise them, and they shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, When I shall have gathered the house of Israel from the people among whom they are scattered, and shall be sanctified in them in the sight of the heathen, then shall they dwell in the land that I have given to my servant Jacob. And they shall dwell safely therein, and shall build houses and plant vineyards. They shall dwell with confidence, when I have executed judgments upon all those that despise them round about them. And they shall know that I am Yahweh their God. Ezekiel 29, here's more judgment, right? All these nations are getting judged. All of them. Ezekiel 29:1. In the 10th year, the 10th month of the 12th day of the month, and the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him, and against all Egypt. Speak and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. I will put my hooks into thy jaws, and I will cause the fish of thy rivers to stick unto thy scales, and I will bring thee up out of the midst of thy rivers, and all the fish of thy rivers shall stick unto thy scales. And I will leave thee thrown into the wilderness, thee and all the fish of thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open fields, thou shalt not be brought together, nor gathered. I have given thee for meat to the beasts of the field, and to the fowls of the heaven. And all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am Yahweh, because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. When they took hold of thee by thy hand, thou didst break and rend all their shoulder, and when they leaned upon thee, thou breakest and madest all their loins to be at a stand. Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I will bring a sword upon thee, and cut off man and beast out of thee. And the land of Egypt shall be desolate and waste, and they shall know that I am Yahweh, because he hath said, The river is mine, and I have made it. Behold, therefore I am against thee, and against thy rivers, and will make the land of Egypt utterly waste and desolate from the tower of Syene, even to the border of Ethiopia. No foot of man shall pass through it, nor foot of beast shall pass through it, neither shall it be inhabited 40 years. And I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her cities among the cities that are laid waste shall be desolate 40 years. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse them through the countries. Yet, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, at the end of 40 years will I gather the Egyptians from the people whither they were scattered, and I will bring again the captivity to Egypt, and will cause them to return to the land of Pathros, into the land of their habitation, and they shall be there a base kingdom. And it shall be the basis of the kingdoms, neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations, for I will diminish them, that they shall no more rule over the nations. And it shall be no more the confidence of the house of Israel, which bringeth their iniquity to remembrance, when they shall look after them, but they shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. And it came to pass in the 7th and 20th year, in the 1st month, and the 1st day of the month, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon caused his army to serve a great service against Tyrus. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was peeled, yet he had no wages, nor his army, for Tyrus, for the service that he had served against it. Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I will give the land of Egypt unto Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, and he shall take her multitude, and take her spoil, and take her prey, and it shall be the wages for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt for his labor, wherewith he served against it, because they wrought for me, saith the Lord Yahweh. In that day I will cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and I will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. Ezekiel 30. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Howl ye, woe worth the day, for the day is near, even the day of Yahweh is near, a cloudy day, it shall be the time of the heathen. And the sword shall come upon Egypt, and great pain shall be in Ethiopia, when the slain shall fall in Egypt. And they shall take away her multitude, and her foundation shall be broken down. Ethiopia and Libya and Lydia, and all the mingled people, and Chub, and the men of the land that is in league, shall fall with them by the sword. Thus saith Yahweh, They also that uphold Egypt shall fall, and the pride of her power shall come down. Interesting we see that again, don't we? Pride. What did Egypt's main thing was pride too, right? And as well as worshiping a lot of false gods. And they were so prideful of their structures and their wealth and everything. And look what's happening. They're going to be taken captive. A lot of them were going to be killed, but also it said that they were going to be taken captive by Babylon. So it wasn't just the children of Israel. You know, we see Egypt being taken captive and killed as well. All because of this right here, right? And including all their abominations too. But from the tower of Syene shall they fall in it by the sword, saith the Lord Yahweh. And they shall be desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her city shall be in the midst of the cities that are wasted. And they shall know that I am Yahweh, when I have set a fire in Egypt, when all her helpers shall be destroyed. In that day shall messengers go forth from me in the ships to make the careless Ethiopians afraid, and great pain shall come upon them, as in the day of Egypt, for lo, it cometh. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will also make the multitude of Egypt to cease by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon. He and his people with him, the terrible of the nations, he shall be brought to destroy the land, and they shall draw their swords against Egypt, and fill the land with the slain. And I will make the rivers dry, and sell the land into the hand of the wicked, and I will make the land waste, and all that is therein, by the hand of strangers. I, Yahweh, have spoken it. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will also destroy the idols, and cause their images to cease out of Noph, and there shall be no more prince in the land of Egypt, and I will put fear in the land of Egypt. And I will make Pathros desolate, and will set fire in Zoan, and I will execute judgments in No, and I will pour out my fury upon Sin, the strength of Egypt, and I will cut off the multitude of No. And I will set fire in Egypt. Sin shall have great pain, and No shall be rent asunder, and Noph shall have distresses daily. The young men of Aven and Pisbeth shall fall by the sword, and these cities shall go into captivity. At Taphanes also the day shall be darkened, when I shall break their yokes of Egypt, and the pomp of her strength shall cease in her. As for her, a cloud shall cover her, and her daughter shall go into captivity. Thus will I execute judgments in Egypt, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the first month, the 7th day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and lo, it shall not be bound up to be healed. Put a roller to bind it, to make it stronghold to the sword, make it strong to hold the sword. Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and will break his arms, the strong and that which was broken, and will cause the sword to fall out of his hand. I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse them through the countries. And I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, and put my sword in his hand. But I will break Pharaoh's arms, and he shall groan before him with the groanings of deadly wounded man. But I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon. The arms of Pharaoh shall fall down. They shall know that I am Yahweh. When I shall put my sword in the hand of the king of Babylon, he shall stretch it out upon the land of Egypt. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and disperse them among the countries, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. Isn't it interesting how God uses the Babylonians to completely, wipe out or punish all these nations surrounding Israel, and Israel included? Like, wow, he uses them to punish them, all these nations. And then eventually, Babylon itself gets punished, right? Because they're not innocent either. They do idol worship and images and abominations as well. Like, all these nations. Even the nations he uses to punish other nations. It's just amazing when you think about it. God's power is just amazing. Ezekiel 31. It came to pass in the 11th year, in the 3rd month, in the first day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak unto Pharaoh king of Egypt, and to his multitude. Whom art thou like in thy greatness? Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon, with fair branches, and with a shadowing shroud of a high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters made him great, the deep set him up on high with her rivers running round about his plants, and set out her a little rivers unto all the trees of the fields. Therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the field, and his boughs were multiplied, and his branches became long, because the multitude of waters, when he shot forth. All the fowls of heaven made their nests in his boughs, and under his branches did all the beasts of the field bring forth their young, and under his shadow dwelt at all great nations. Thus was he fair in his greatness, and the length of his branches, for his root was by great waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The fir trees were not like his boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like his branches, nor any tree in the garden of God was like unto him in his beauty. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, and he hath shot up top among the thick boughs, and his heart is lifted up in his height. I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness. And strangers, the terrible of the nations, have cut him off, and have left him. Upon the mountains and all the valleys his branches are fallen, and his boughs are broken by all the rivers of the land, and all the people of the earth are gone down from his shadow, and have left him. Upon his ruin shall all the fowls of heaven remain, all the beasts of the field shall be upon his branches, to the end that none of all the trees by the waters exalt themselves for their height, neither shoot up the top among the thick boughs, neither their trees stand up in their length and their height. All that drink water, for they are delivered unto the death, to the nether parts of the earth, in the midst of the children of men, with them that go down into the pit. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, in the day when he went down to the grave I caused a mourning, I covered the deep for him, and I restrained the floods thereof, and the great waters were stayed, and I caused Lebanon to mourn for him, and all the trees of the field fainted for him. I made all the nations to shake at the sound of his fall, when I cast him down to hell with them that descend into the pit. All the trees of Eden, and the choice and best of Lebanon, all that drink water, shall be comforted in the nether parts of the earth. They also went down to hell with him unto them that be slain with the sword, and they that were his arm. that dwelt under his shadow in the midst of the heathen. To whom art thou thus like in glory and in greatness among the trees of Eden? Yet shalt thou be brought down with the trees of Eden to the nether parts of the earth. Thou shalt lie in the midst of the uncircumcised with them that be slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord Yahweh. Ezekiel 32. It came to pass in the 12th year, in the 12th month, on the first day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say unto him, Thou art like a young lion of the nations, and thou art as a whale in the seas, and thou camest forth with thy rivers, and thou troublest the waters with thy feet, and fouledst their rivers. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will therefore spread out my net over thee with a company of many people, and they shall bring thee up in my net. Then will I leave thee upon the land, and I will cast thee forth upon thy open field, and will cause all the fowls of heaven to remain upon thee, and I will fill the beasts of the whole earth with thee. And I will lay thy flesh upon the mountains, and fill the valleys with thy height. I will also water with thy blood of the land, wherein thou swimmest, even to the mountains, and the river shall be full of thee. When I shall put thee out, I will cover the heaven, and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over thee, and set darkness upon thy land, saith the Lord Yahweh. I will also vex the hearts of many people, when I shall bring thy destruction among the nations, into the countries which thou hast not known. Yea, I will make many people amazed at thee, and their kings shall be horribly afraid for thee, when I shall brandish my sword before them, and they shall tremble at every moment, every man for his own life, in the day of thy fall. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, the sword of the king of Babylon shall come upon thee. By the swords of the mighty will I cause thy multitude to fall, the terrible of the nations, all of them. They shall spoil the pomp of Egypt, and all the multitude thereof shall be destroyed. I will destroy also the beasts thereof from beside the great waters. Neither shall the flood of man trouble them any more, nor the hoofs of beasts trouble them. Then I will make their waters deep, and cause their rivers to run like oil, saith the Lord Yahweh. When I shall make the land of Egypt desolate, and the country shall be destitute of that whereof it was full, when I shall smite all them that dwell therein, then shall they know that I am Yahweh. This is the lamentation wherewith they shall lament her. The daughters of the nations shall lament her. They shall lament for her, even for Egypt, and for all her multitude, saith the Lord Yahweh. It came to pass also in the 12th year, in the 15th day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, wail for the multitude of Egypt, and cast them down, even her and the daughters of the famous nations, unto the nether parts of the earth, with them that go down into the pit. Whom dost thou pass in beauty? Go down and be thou laid with the uncircumcised. They shall fall in the midst of them that are slain by the sword. She is delivered to the sword, draw her and all her multitudes. The strong among the mighty shall speak to him out of the midst of hell with them that help him. They are gone down, they lie uncircumcised, slain by the sword. Asher is there in all her company, his graves are about him, all of them slain, fallen by the sword, whose graves are set in the sides of the pit, and her company is round about her grave, all of them slain, fallen by the sword, which caused terror in the land of the living. There is a lamb and all her multitude round about her grave, all of them slain, fallen by the sword, which are gone down, uncircumcised into the nether parts of the earth, which caused their terror in the land of the living. Yet have they borne their shame with them that go down to the pit. They have set her a bed in the midst of the slain with all her multitude. Her graves are round about him, all of them uncircumcised, slain by the sword, though their terror was caused in the land of the living. Yet have they borne their shame with them that go down to the pit. He is put in the midst of them that be slain. There is Meshech, Tubal, and all her multitude. Her graves are round about him, all of them uncircumcised, slain by the sword, though they caused their terror in the land of the living. And they shall not lie with the mighty that are fallen of the uncircumcised, which are gone down to hell with their weapons of war, and they have laid their swords under their heads, but their iniquity shall be upon their bones, though they were the terror of the mighty in the land of the living. Yea, there shall be broken in the midst of the uncircumcised, and shalt lie with them that are slain with the sword. There is Edom, her kings, and her princes, which with the might are laid by them that were slain by the sword. They shall lie with the uncircumcised, and with them that go down to the pit. There be the princes of the north, all of them, and all the Zidonians which are gone down with the slain. With their terror they are ashamed of their might, and they and they lie uncircumcised with them that be slain by the sword, and bear their shame with them that go down to the pit. Pharaoh and all shall see them, and shall be comforted over all his multitude. Even Pharaoh and all his army slain by the sword, saith the Lord Yahweh. For I have caused my terror in the land of the living, and he shall be laid in the midst of the uncircumcised with them that are slain with the sword, even Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord Yahweh. Ezekiel 33. Again the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, When I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man of their coasts, and set him for their watchman, if when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he bloweth the trumpet, and warn the people, that whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet, and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him, but he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come, and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore shalt thou hear the word at my mouth, and warn them from me. When I say unto the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die, if thou dost not speak to warn the wicked from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the wicked of his way, to turn from it, if he do not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. Therefore, O thou son of man, speak unto the house of Israel. Thus ye speak, saying, If our transgressions and our sins be upon us, and we pine away in them, how shall we then live? Say unto them, As I live, saith the Lord Yahweh, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn ye from your evil ways, for why will ye die, O house of Israel? Therefore, thou son of man, say unto the children of thy people, The righteousness of the righteous shall not deliver him in the day of his transgression. As for the wickedness of the wicked, he shall not fall thereby in the day that he turneth from his wickedness, neither shall the righteous be able to live for his righteousness in the day that he sinneth. When I shall say to the righteous that he shall surely live, if he trust to his own righteousness, and commit iniquity, all his righteousness shall not be remembered, but for his iniquity that he hath committed he shall die for it. Again, when I say unto the wicked, Thou shalt surely die, if he turn from his sin and do that which is lawful and right. If the wicked restore the pledge and give again that he had robbed, walk in the statutes of life, without committing iniquity, he shall surely live and not die. None of his sins that he hath committed shall be mentioned unto him. He hath done that which is lawful and right, he shall surely live. If the children of thy people say, The way of the Lord is not equal, but as for them their way is not equal, when the righteous turneth from his righteousness and committeth iniquity, he shall even die thereby. But if the wicked turn from his wickedness, and do that which is lawful and right, he shall live thereby. Yet ye say, The way of the Lord is not equal, O ye house of Israel. I will judge you, every one after his ways. It came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month, that one had escaped out of Jerusalem, came unto me, saying, The city is smitten. Now the hand of Yahweh was upon me in the evening, before he that was escaped came, and I had opened my mouth until he came to me in the morning, and my mouth was opened, and I was no more dumb. Then the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, they that inhabit those wastes of the land of Israel speak, saying, Abraham was one, and he inherited the land, but we are many, and the land is given us for an inheritance. Wherefore say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Ye eat with the blood, and lift up your eyes toward your idols, and shed blood, and shall ye possess the land? Ye stand upon your sword, ye work abomination, ye defile every one his neighbor's wife, and ye shall possess the land? Say thou thus unto them, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, As I live, surely they that are in the waste shall fall by the sword, and him that is in the open field will I give to the beast to be devoured. And they that be in the forts and in the cave shall die of the pestilence. For I will lay the land most desolate, and the pomp of her strength shall cease, and the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, that none shall pass through. Then shall they know that I am Yahweh, when I have laid the land most desolate, because of all their abominations which they have committed. Also thus, son of man, the children of thy people are still talking against thee by the walls and in the doors of the houses, and speak one to another, every one to his brother, saying, Come, I pray you, and hear what the word that cometh forth from Yahweh. And they come unto thee as the people cometh, and they sit before thee as my people, and they hear the words, but they will not do them. For their mouth they show much love, but their heart goeth after their covetousness. And lo, thou art unto them as a very lovely song of one that hath a pleasant voice and can play well on an instrument, for they hear the words, but they do them not. This reminds me of, these two verses remind me of when God is talking about the Pharisees. They, with their mouth, they worship me, but with their heart is far from me. Not just the Pharisees, but a lot of people are like that too. With their mouth, they'll say, "Oh, I love God, I'm a Christian," but their heart is further than probably an unbeliever from God. Same here. They're like wanting to hear what Ezekiel has to say, like he's playing an instrument, but they're going to go do their own thing anyway, go after their own covetousness anyway. And when this cometh to pass, lo, it will come, then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them. Alright, lots of great lessons to learn here through Ezekiel. And the biggest thing is pride. I see so much about pride. All these nations getting judged because of pride and wickedness. Right? God will judge every nation that thinks of themselves more highly than they ought, and that worships pride, worships themselves, worships abominations. Isn't that interesting? We see a lot of that today. Well, God will deal with prideful people. So, that's going to make a good Bible study. Can't wait to do that. So, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you guys have a great evening, morning, noon, wherever you're at. Remember to put God first in everything you do. Have faith in Him. Trust in Him. Wait upon Him. Hope in Him. And flee pride. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Right? Flee pride. And you'll never be sorry when you're trusting in God. So, all right. Well, God willingly, we'll see you tomorrow with more Bible reading. We're a few more days of Ezekiel. So, thanks again, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.